Ion had always been a quiet boy, the kind of child who didn't ask for much, but observed everything with sharp, thoughtful eyes. His childhood had been full of struggles, the kind that made other children his age grow up a little too fast. When he was just 10 years old, he lost his father. It was a rainy evening, the kind that drenches not just the clothes, but the soul. He still remembered standing outside the hospital room, clutching his mother's hand, her knuckles white as she silently prayed. The doctor came out and shook his head. His father was gone. That night changed everything. Their small house suddenly felt bigger, colder. His mother, Fariha, cried silently when she thought he was asleep, but Ion would hear the muffled sobs through the thin wall. He didn't cry, not in front of her. Instead, he promised himself he would grow strong and take care of her someday. The years after that were difficult. Fariha started working as a tailor from home. She had always been skilled with a needle, and soon word spread that she could stitch beautiful clothes at fair prices. People from the neighborhood came with their fabric rolls and orders, and she would work tirelessly, from dawn until late at night. Ion grew up watching this. He would sit near her as she worked, his school books open on the floor, the soft rhythmic sound of the sewing machine filling the room. He saw how tired she was, how her fingers were always red from pricking needles, how her back ached at the end of the day. Sometimes she would skip dinner just so he could eat an extra roti. He never forgot those moments. By the time Ion turned 16, he wanted to do more than just watch. He wanted to help her, but his mother always insisted he focus on his studies. "You are my dream, Ion," she would say. "One day we'll finish school, get a good job, and live a better life than this. That's all I want." But Ion couldn't sit still anymore. One day, while walking back from school, he noticed a small electronics repair shop near the market. The man who ran it, an old mechanic named Salim, was struggling to fix a fan while answering 2 customers at the same time. The shop was cluttered with wires, radios, old TV, and fans in different stages of repair. Something about that place called to Ion. He walked up to Salim after school the next day. "Uncle, do you need help? I can sweep the shop, arrange the tools, maybe run errands for you." Salim looked at him carefully. "You're a schoolboy. Why do you want to work here? Go home, study." Ion hesitated, then said softly, "My mother works very hard. I want to help her. I can come after school." Something about the boy's sincerity touched Salim. "Oh, fine," he said gruffly, though there was kindness in his eyes. Come tomorrow. But remember, work is work. You'll sweep, clean, bring tea sometimes, and maybe learn something if you pay attention." And just like that, Ion had his first job. Every day after school, he would rush to the shop, put his bag in the corner, and get to work. He swept the floor, arranged the screws and pliers, fetched tea for customers, and sometimes even helped hold wires or pass tools when Salim worked on complicated repairs. Slowly, he began learning how to solder a broken wire, how to test a fuse, how to open a fan motor without damaging it. The days were long and tiring, but Ion didn't complain. At night, he still did his homework by the light of the old bulb while his mother sewed nearby. She would sometimes ask why he came home late, and he would shrug it off with a smile. "Just staying back for extra studies," he would say, not wanting her to worry. Weeks passed, then months. The day finally came when Salim handed him an envelope. "Here," he said, "your first salary. You worked hard, you earned this." Ion's heart raced as he held the envelope. His fingers trembled. It was not a huge amount, just enough to buy groceries for a week, but to him it felt like gold. It was proof that he could stand on his own 2 feet, proof that he could do something for the woman who had done everything for him. He walked home that evening slower than usual, the envelope pressed to his chest. Memories flooded his mind. The times his mother stayed awake when he had a fever, gently placing a damp cloth on his forehead. The times she went hungry just to save enough money to pay his school fees. The nights she cried quietly, thinking he didn't notice. When he reached home, he found his mother sitting on the floor, mending an old sari. The sewing machine whirred softly in the background. The smell of cooked lentils lingered in the air. She looked tired, as always. But when she saw him, she smiled. "You're early today," she said. Ion didn't say anything at first. He just sat down beside her, his heart beating fast. Then, with shaking hands, he placed the envelope in her lap. Fariha looked at it, confused. "What is this, Beta? and swallowed hard. Amy, this is my first salary. I've been working after school at the electronics shop. I wanted to help you. Everything I have is because of you. This money, it's for you. For a moment, Fariha just stared at the envelope. Then her hands began to tremble. She opened it and saw the notes neatly tucked inside. Tears welled up in her eyes. She wasn't crying because of the money, though she knew it would help them buy rice, pay bills, maybe even get a new school bag for Ion. But because her son had grown up to understand her pain and her sacrifices. She pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly as tears rolled down her cheeks. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "You are still a child." "No, Amy," Ion said softly, hugging her back. "I'm not a child anymore. You've carried everything alone for so long. Now, it's my turn." For a long time they sat like that, mother and son, their hearts full of emotions too deep for words. The little house with its cracked walls and dim light felt warmer that evening. It was no longer just a house. It felt like a home, glowing with love and pride. That night, when Ion lay down to sleep, he felt lighter, as though a burden had lifted off his shoulders. He could still feel his mother's arms around him, still hear the way her voice broke when she thanked him. And as he drifted off to sleep, one thought stayed in his mind. This was only the beginning. He would work harder, study harder, do whatever it took to give his mother the life she deserved. The next morning, Ion woke up to a smell that instantly took him back to happier times. The aroma of sizzling butter and spices filled the tiny kitchen. He rubbed his eyes and walked in, surprised to see his mother busy at the stove. "Ami, you're up so early," he said, yawning. Faria turned with a smile that lit up her face. "Good morning, Beta. Sit down. Today is a special day." Ion raised an eyebrow. "A special? Why?" Because yesterday my son made me the proudest mother in the world." She placed a plate in front of him, stacked with steaming hot parathas stuffed with spicy mashed potatoes. His favorite breakfast, something she rarely made because it was costly and time-consuming. His eyes widened. "Ami, you didn't have to—" "Hush," she said, sitting beside him. "You gave me your first salary. Do you know what that means to a mother? It means her child has grown into a man who understands sacrifice, who respects her struggle. This breakfast is my way of saying thank you." Ion smiled sheepishly and took a bite. The paratha was warm, buttery, perfect. "This tastes just like the ones Abu used to make on Sundays," he said quietly. Fariha's smile softened, and for a moment her eyes turned glassy. "Yes," she whispered, "he used to love making these for you." They ate together in silence, but it wasn't the heavy silence of sorrow. It was peaceful, as though for the first time in a long time, their little house was filled with hope. After breakfast, Faria carefully folded the envelope with the money and tucked it into her old wooden box, the same box where she kept small treasures. Ion's first drawing, a family photograph, a letter from her late husband. This envelope was now part of that box, a symbol of her son's love. But she didn't spend it right away. Instead, she thought about what would truly make her son happy. The next day, after finishing her sewing work, she went to the market. It had been a long time since she had bought anything new, and every coin she spent weighed heavy on her heart. But this time, her steps were light. She stopped at a small shop and bought a brand new school bag, a sturdy one, black with red stripes, the kind she knew Ion had once admired in the window but never asked for because he knew they couldn't afford it. She also bought a pair of shoes, simple but strong, and with the little money left, she bought a wristwatch, nothing expensive, but sleek and perfect for a boy who was growing into a young man. That evening, Ion came home tired from work, his shirt slightly dusty, his hands smelling of machine oil. He dropped his school bag in the corner and was about to wash up when Faria called him. "Beta, sit here for a moment," she said, gesturing to the floor mat. He sat down, curious. She placed the bag, shoes, and watch in front of him. Ion stared at them, shocked. "What is this?" "These are from your first salary," she said softly. "But Amy," he protested, "I gave you that money for yourself. You should have bought something you need. Maybe a new sari, or a better lamp for your work. Fariha cupped his face with both hands and smiled. "Vian, a mother's happiness lies in her child's happiness. What could I buy for myself that would bring me more joy than seeing you go to school with a new bag, wearing good shoes, and telling the time on your own watch? You deserve this more than I do." Ion's throat tightened. He ran his fingers over the new bag. opened it, smelled the fresh fabric. He looked at the shoes, shiny and perfect, and finally he held the watch in his hand. It gleamed under the weak light bulb. "Amy," he whispered, unable to say more. His heart was too full. Fariha smiled and fastened the watch around his wrist. "From now on, this will remind you of how far you've come and how far you can still go." Ayan nodded, his eyes misty. "I promise, Amy," he said quietly. "I will study harder, work harder. One day I'll buy you a house with big windows so you never have to stitch under this dim light again. I'll get you a sewing machine that doesn't make so much noise, and I'll make sure you never have to skip a meal again." Fariha couldn't hold back her tears this time. She pulled him into a hug again, her hands running over his hair. "I don't need a big house, Beta. You are my home. As long as you are with me, I have everything I need." From that day on, something changed in Ayan. He no longer felt like just a boy trying to survive. He felt responsible, determined. Every morning he woke up a little earlier to study before school, and after school he worked harder at the shop. Salim noticed the change too. "You're learning fast," Salim said one evening. "Soon you'll be able to fix these things yourself." "Maybe one day you'll open your own shop," Ayan smiled. "Maybe, but first I want to finish school. My mother wants me to study." Salim nodded approvingly. "Good, and never forget her wishes. A mother's blessings can carry a man further than any education." Months turned into a year. Ayan kept saving little by little, giving part of every salary to his mother. Together they repaired their small home, bought a better lamp, and even managed to get a second-hand fan for the hot summers. But more than the material things, what grew between them was a bond stronger than ever. Fariha no longer felt alone in her struggles. Her son was her partner now, and Ayan no longer felt like a helpless boy. He was her protector, her pride. One evening, after a particularly long day at the shop, Ayan came home to find his mother sitting outside sipping tea. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink. "Come sit," she said, patting the chair next to her. He sat and they watched the sky together. "Do you know, Ayan," she said softly, "your father would have been so proud of you. You remind me of him more every day. The way you care, the way you work so hard." Ayan didn't speak for a moment. Then he said one day, "Amy, I'll do something that will make him proud, no matter where he is." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You already have." In that quiet moment, as the last rays of sunlight faded, Ayan realized something. Life was not about waiting for a better tomorrow. It was about building it one small act of love at a time. And he had already begun. Years later, when Ayan became an engineer and brought home his first big paycheck, he still gave it to his mother before spending a single rupee. And she, just like the first time, cried, not because of the money, but because the little boy who once brought her a humble envelope had kept his promise. Years passed, as they always do, one season blending into another. Ayan grew from a thin, hard-working boy into a young man with steady shoulders and sharp, determined eyes. His life was not easy. There were days when he came home exhausted, covered in grease from the shop, his books still waiting for him on the table, but he never complained. With every passing month, he balanced two lives, a diligent student and a dedicated worker. Salim, the shop owner, became more than just an employer. He became a mentor, teaching Ayan not just how to repair machines, but how to deal with customers, manage money, and stay honest even when it was tempting to cut corners. Integrity, Beta, Salim would often say, is worth more than gold. If people trust you, you'll never go hungry. By the time Ayan finished school, he had saved enough to pay for his college admission. His mother cried with joy when he showed her the acceptance letter. "Do you see, Amy?" Ayan said, hugging her. "This is just the beginning." Life became even more difficult then. College meant higher expenses, longer hours of study, and less time to work. But Ayan never stopped. He worked at the shop in the evenings and sometimes late into the night. He studied under the flickering bulb, fighting sleep with cups of tea. There were moments when he thought he couldn't go on, when exams, work, and exhaustion all seemed too much. But then he would remember his promise to his mother, the look of pride in her eyes, and he would push himself harder. Years later, Ayan graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. His mother wore her simplest sari to the convocation, but held her head high as she watched her son walk across the stage. For Fariha, there was no greater joy than seeing Ian's name called, no greater reward than seeing him stand tall in his graduation robe. Soon after, Ian got a job at a well-known company in the city. The first day he received his paycheck, he traveled back home, now a bus ride away from the rented room where he lived for work, and placed the envelope in his mother's hands, just like he had done years ago with his very first salary. But it still belongs to you first. Fariha's eyes misted over. Ian, you've given me so much already. You don't have to interrupted gently, a better life, and now I can finally give it to you. The next few months were a whirlwind with planning. His dream was clear. He wanted to build a house not just for himself, but for the woman who had spent half her life stitching under dim light and patching up broken dreams. Finally, after a year of tireless effort, the foundation of their new house was laid. This house, this life, all of it is just a reflection of your heart. They sat together until the stars came out, a mother and son who had faced the storms of life and built something beautiful out of them.